Samuel had lived on the ranch for many years. It was the kind of place where the land stretched so far that it touched the sky. Every morning, he woke up before the sun, put on his boots, and stepped outside to begin another long day of work. The wind always carried the smell of dry grass and the sound of distant cattle. For most people, this quiet life would feel lonely. But Samuel had learned to accept it. After losing his wife 3 years earlier, the silence had become part of him. It was not easy, but it was familiar. The ranch house stood alone in the middle of the wide land. It had wooden walls the sun had faded, and a porch with a rocking chair that creaked every time Samuel sat on it. Inside, the rooms were neat but empty. They held memories that Samuel did not talk about anymore. His wife, Mary, used to fill the rooms with laughter, soft singing, and the smell of homemade bread. After she passed away, the place felt heavy, like a story waiting for a new chapter that never came. Samuel worked hard every day, fixing fences, feeding cattle, and repairing things around the ranch. He cooked simple meals like eggs, bread, or canned soup. He did not complain, but he also never felt the warmth of a real home again. His life had become a routine: work, eat, sleep, repeat. Some days he wondered if this was all life had left for him. Then one afternoon, everything changed. A dust storm rolled across the land like a great brown curtain. The sky turned darker, and the wind picked up speed, carrying sand and dirt with it. Samuel hurried to tie down anything that might blow away. The storm was strong, but storms were normal in that part of the country. He worked quickly, pulling a tarp over the tools and closing the barn doors before the dust grew too thick to see. Just as he was about to go inside the house, he noticed a figure near the ranch gate. At first, he thought the wind was playing tricks on him, but when he wiped the dust from his eyes and looked again, he saw a person small, thin, and struggling to walk against the blowing wind. Samuel hesitated, unsure if he should approach. But something inside him would not let him ignore the figure. He stepped off the porch and walked toward the gate. As the person came closer, Samuel realized it was a young woman. She had dust in her hair, dirt on her clothes, and a backpack that looked old and tired. She held one hand up to shield her eyes from the sand. When she finally reached him, she stopped, breathing hard, as if she had been walking for miles without rest. "Are you all right?" Samuel asked in his calm, quiet voice. The woman nodded, though her face showed exhaustion. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't know where else to go. The storm, it caught me out on the road." Samuel could see her hands shaking slightly. He opened the gate for her and guided her toward the porch where the wind was weaker. Once they reached the house, he told her to sit on the bench. She nodded gratefully and lowered herself down, trying to catch her breath. "What's your name?" Samuel asked gently. "Lena," she said. "I'm sorry for showing up like this. I didn't mean to bother anyone." "You're not bothering anyone," Samuel replied. "Are you lost?" She looked down at her dusty shoes before answering. "Not lost," she whispered. "Just not sure where to go anymore." Samuel didn't push her to explain. He could see enough in her eyes: tiredness, worry, and a kind of sadness he recognized from his own reflection some mornings. He brought her a glass of water from the kitchen. She drank it slowly, as if her body needed time to accept the comfort. When the storm began to quiet down, the air settled a little, and a soft silence filled the porch. Lena looked around the ranch, her eyes moving from the fields to the barn, and then back to Samuel. She seemed unsure of what to say next. Finally, she took a deep breath. I don't have a place to stay tonight," she said. "I left the town 2 days ago, and I've been walking since. Things weren't good there. I don't want to go back." Samuel listened without judgment. Lena continued, her voice small but steady. "I'm not asking for money. I'm not trying to take advantage. I just need a safe place for a little while." Samuel leaned against the porch railing, trying to understand her situation. This was unusual for him. He rarely had visitors, and he had never had someone show up in such a desperate condition. He didn't know what she had been through, but he could see she meant no harm. Lena looked up, her eyes searching his face nervously. "If I cook and clean, may I stay?" she asked. Her voice trembled slightly, as if she feared he would say no. Samuel did not answer right away. He wasn't used to sudden changes or unexpected company. His life had been quiet for so long that the thought of someone else being in the house felt strange, but at the same time, he remembered the long, silent nights and the way loneliness sometimes felt heavier than the things he carried in his hands. Lena continued before he could speak. "I'm hardworking. I don't need anything fancy. I just need a roof and a little food. I can take care of the kitchen, clean the house, whatever you need. I just don't want to sleep outside again." She lowered her head, as if embarrassed to ask for help. Samuel looked at her carefully, her tired face, her dusty clothes, her hands holding each other tightly. She reminded him of someone who had faced too many problems alone. He didn't know her story, but he could tell she wasn't trying to cause trouble. He took a slow breath, and then did something unexpected, even to himself. He pulled out a chair from beside the door, placed it in front of her, and sat down. Not standing above her, not questioning her from a distance, he sat so they were face to face, almost level. "Tell me what happened," he said softly. "Not everything, just whatever you feel comfortable sharing." Lena looked at him with surprise. Most strangers didn't show that kind of kindness. She hesitated, then nodded. She started speaking slowly at first, explaining that she had left home in search of better work. Things in the town had not gone as planned, and the people she trusted did not treat her well. She felt stuck, unwanted, and unsafe. She had no family nearby, and she didn't want to depend on anyone who might hurt her again. So she packed her few things and started walking, hoping she would find a place where she could be useful. As she talked, Samuel listened carefully. He didn't interrupt or ask too many questions. He simply let her speak. The more she shared, the more he felt a quiet respect for her. It took courage to walk away from a difficult life and even more courage to ask for help from a stranger. When she finished, she looked down at her hands again. "I understand if you can't let me stay," she whispered. "I just thought I should ask." Samuel looked at her and felt something shift inside him. Maybe it was the loneliness he carried. Maybe it was the simple kindness he still believed in. Or maybe he saw a little of his younger self in her, someone trying to build a new life from nothing. "You can stay," he finally said. "At least for now. We'll see how things go." Lena looked up sharply, her eyes wide with surprise. "Really?" Samuel nodded. "You look like you need rest. And the house? Well, it could use someone who knows their way around a kitchen." A small, relieved smile appeared on her face. "Thank you," she said, the words trembling with emotion. Samuel stood and opened the door for her. "Come inside. You can wash up, and I'll find you something to eat." As she stepped into the house, the quiet room seemed to shift, as if the walls themselves felt the change. Samuel watched her walk inside, and felt something he had not felt in a long time. A sense that maybe the next chapter of his life was beginning right there. On an afternoon when the dust storm blew in, a stranger who simply needed a place to stay. And for the first time in many years, the house no longer felt completely empty. Lena woke up the next morning to the sound of birds outside the window. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then she noticed the small wooden room, the folded blanket Samuel had left for her, and the warm smell of coffee drifting in from the kitchen. When she sat up, sunlight fell through the window and touched the floor like a soft invitation. It was the first peaceful morning she'd had in weeks. She stepped into the kitchen slowly, unsure if she was supposed to help or wait. Samuel was already there, stirring something in a pot. When he turned and saw her, his expression stayed calm, almost unreadable, but not unkind. "Morning," he said simply. "Good morning," she replied, her voice still sleepy. "I made some oatmeal," he said. "It's not fancy, but it'll fill you up." Lena smiled lightly. "Anything warm feels fancy to me right now." Samuel nodded and set a bowl in front of her. He didn't sit down right away but moved around the kitchen, putting tools away from the night before and checking the weather from the window. Lena ate quietly at first, unsure if she should speak. The kitchen felt different from her old life, quieter, calmer, and somehow safer. After a few minutes, Samuel sat across from her with his own bowl. They ate without rush. It felt almost like a small morning routine, even though it was her first full day there. When they were done, Lena stood up and immediately gathered the dishes. "You don't have to do that yet," Samuel said. "I want to," she replied. "You already helped me. Let me help you back." She washed the dishes carefully, wanting to show she meant her promise. Samuel watched for a moment, then nodded to himself as if making a silent decision. "I'll be out fixing the north fence today," he said. "It got shaken loose in the storm yesterday." "Is there anything I can do here?" she asked. "You said you can cook and clean," he answered. "So do what you feel needs doing. I'm not going to give you a long list. Just make yourself comfortable." Lena nodded. She felt grateful for his trust, and she wanted to show she respected it. Samuel grabbed his hat and tools. Before stepping out, he looked back once. "If you need anything, I'll be nearby." Lena watched him walk toward the open fields. His silhouette grew smaller as he moved across the land. But she could tell he was a man who knew how to work hard. His steps were steady, his shoulders strong, and his pace steady. He lived in a world full of responsibilities. She took a deep breath and looked around the kitchen. It needed some organizing, not because it was dirty, but because it lacked the gentle touch of someone who cared about small details. She rolled up her sleeves and began cleaning. She scraped away dried spots on the counter, rearranged the spices, wiped the windowsills, and swept the floor. As she worked, the house slowly changed. It began to feel less like an old, lonely place, and more like a home. By midday, she had cleaned the main rooms and started a simple soup for lunch. She didn't know when Samuel would return, but she wanted something warm waiting for him. The smell filled the kitchen, soft and comforting. When Samuel finally came back, his boots were dusty, and his shirt stuck to him with sweat. He stepped onto the porch and paused for a moment, as if testing the air. Something smelled different. He opened the door slowly and looked around. The room felt brighter, lighter. The clutter was gone. The surfaces were clean, and the air carried the warm smell of soup. He didn't say anything at first. Just took it in quietly. "You've been busy," he said at last. "I hope it's okay," Lena replied, nervous that she might have overstepped. Samuel nodded. "It's more than okay." He washed up and joined her at the table. When he tasted the soup, he gave a small, honest smile. "Haven't had anything like this in a long time." Lena laughed softly. "It's just vegetables, maybe, but it tastes like someone cared while making it." His words touched her more than he realized. It had been a long time since anyone noticed her efforts. After lunch, Samuel showed her where extra blankets were stored and how to work the water pump behind the house. As he spoke, he kept his sentences short but thoughtful. He was a man of few words, yet those words were always steady and sincere. The afternoon passed quietly. Samuel went back to work outside, and Lena continued organizing the house. She found old photos on a dusty shelf. Pictures of Samuel with a woman smiling beside him, both of them standing in front of the same porch she had walked onto yesterday. She gently wiped the frames and put them back. She didn't ask about the woman because she already knew. Loss had a way of leaving its mark without explanation. As the sun lowered, Samuel returned again. This time, he seemed a bit surprised to see Lena sweeping the front porch. "You don't need to do everything in one day," he said. Lena smiled. "I know, but doing something helps me feel normal." Samuel understood. After his wife passed, work had been the only thing that kept him steady too. Later, they shared a simple dinner: bread, soup, and boiled potatoes. It wasn't much, but for both of them, it felt like a shared moment that meant more than the food itself. After eating, Samuel sat on his rocking chair outside while Lena washed the dishes inside. The sky turned pink, then orange, and finally deep blue sprinkled with stars. When Lena stepped outside, She found Samuel looking across the quiet land, the wind brushing past him. "It's peaceful out here," she said. He nodded. "Always has been. But peaceful can still be lonely." Lena didn't respond right away. She understood that sentence far too deeply. After a moment, Samuel asked, "You settle in, okay?" "Yes," she said softly. "Your home is very warm." He let out a breath, almost like a small laugh. "It hasn't felt warm in a long time." They stayed silent for a few moments, listening to the crickets. The night was cool but gentle. Lena finally spoke. "I want you to know something. I'm not here to take advantage. If there's ever a time you want me to leave, just tell me. I don't want to be a burden." Samuel turned his head slightly, as if considering her words. "You're not a burden," he said. "You've brought life back to the house." Lena didn't expect such honesty from him. "Thank you," she whispered. Samuel stood, stretching his tired arms. "You did good work today. Tomorrow, if you want, I can show you the barn and the garden. Only if you feel comfortable." "I'd like that," Lena said. Before going inside, Samuel paused. "I don't know what brought you here, or how long you'll stay. But you have a place here for now. That's enough." It was not an emotional speech. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple, steady, and sincere. The way Samuel spoke about everything, but those words settled inside Lena's chest like a gentle anchor. She felt safe, maybe for the first time in a long while. That night she lay down on the small bed and listened to the soft sounds of the ranch, the wind passing through the trees, the distant mooing of cattle, and the creaking of the wooden porch. It was a kind of quiet she hadn't known before. A comforting quiet. As she closed her eyes, she thought about how quickly life could change. Yesterday, she had been walking alone through a storm, unsure if she would make it to nightfall. Today, she had cleaned a home, cooked a meal, and shared a peaceful evening with someone who treated her with respect instead of suspicion. Samuel, sitting in his rocking chair outside, felt something shift inside himself too. The house didn't feel so heavy anymore. The rooms didn't feel as empty. He didn't know what would come next. But for the first time in years, he felt like he wasn't living alone in a silent world. The deal they had made was simple: she would cook and clean, and he would give her a place to stay. But even in the beginning, it was already becoming something more. Something that felt like hope. The next few weeks on the ranch passed quietly but meaningfully. Each day began with the sun rising gently over the fields, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold. Lena slowly became part of the daily routine. At first, she wasn't sure how much she should do. But Samuel never rushed her. He simply showed her things one step at a time. Bit by bit, her presence began to blend into the rhythm of the ranch. Every morning, she woke early and made breakfast, sometimes eggs, sometimes porridge, sometimes just warm tea with bread. Samuel always thanked her. Even when the meals were simple, his gratitude wasn't loud or dramatic. It was in the little nods, the way he sat comfortably at the table, and the calm quiet between them that felt peaceful instead of empty. After breakfast, Samuel went out to work. He fixed fences, checked on the cattle, repaired old tools, and kept the ranch running. Lena often watched him from the porch for a moment before starting her own tasks. She would sweep the floors, wash clothes, tidy shelves, and take care of the little things the house needed. It made her feel useful, like she finally had a place where her efforts mattered. But over time, Samuel started to teach her more than just house chores. One morning after breakfast, he picked up his hat and asked, "Want to come along today? You can see how things work around here." Lena hesitated only for a moment before nodding. She followed him outside, where the early breeze felt cool and fresh. He led her to the barn, which smelled of hay and wood. There, he introduced her to the horses. One was old and gentle. The other was young and energetic. "This one's Daisy," he said, patting the older horse. "She's calm, won't give you trouble." Lena reached out carefully and touched Daisy's smooth fur. The horse leaned in, accepting her softly. It surprised Lena how peaceful it felt to be near such a big animal. Samuel taught her how to brush the horses, how to feed them, and how to check if they needed anything. He spoke in simple instructions, patient and steady. She listened closely and followed his guidance. Soon, they were working side by side. When she made mistakes, he corrected her kindly, without making her feel embarrassed. By afternoon, Lena had a streak of dirt across her cheek, hay in her hair, and a tired smile on her face. Samuel noticed and gave a small chuckle. "You worked hard," he said. "Most people give up after the first hour." "I like learning," Lena replied. "It feels good to be part of something." Those words stayed with Samuel long after she walked back to the house to wash up. He wasn't used to someone wanting to be part of his world. For years, he had done everything alone. Sharing the work felt strange at first. But now, it felt right. In the evenings, when the sun began to set, they sometimes sat together on the porch. They talked about simple things, the weather, the animals, the old days, the town nearby. Samuel told her stories about his youth, about his first horse, about the challenges of running a ranch. He wasn't a man who talked about himself easily. But somehow, speaking to Lena felt natural. Lena shared parts of her own story too. She talked about her childhood, her hopes, and the tough situations she had gone through. She didn't give every detail, but what she did share made Samuel understand how strong she really was. She had survived difficulties that would have broken many people, yet she still had gentleness in her voice and hope in her eyes. As weeks passed, they grew closer, not in a dramatic or sudden way, but in slow, steady steps. Trust grew quietly between them, like a plant that sprouts in small pieces until one day it stands firm and alive. Sometimes they laughed together, sometimes they sat in silence, but the silence was no longer heavy. It felt warm. The nearby town, however, began to notice Lena's presence. People talked. Some wondered why a young woman was living on the ranch with a widowed man. Others made assumptions not because they knew anything, but because gossip always finds a way to travel faster than truth. One day, Samuel had to go into town to buy supplies. Lena stayed behind to finish cleaning the kitchen. When he returned hours later, he looked more tired than usual. His shoulders were tight, and his jaw set in a way she hadn't seen before. "Everything okay?" she asked, sensing something was wrong. Samuel placed the bags on the counter and took a slow breath. "People in town talk too much," he said. "They're asking questions, making their own stories." Lena froze. Her heart sank immediately. She had faced whispers before, people judging her without knowing her story. She didn't want to bring that kind of trouble here. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to cause problems. If it's better, I can leave." The words slipped out with fear she tried to hide. She didn't want to leave, but she didn't want to bring trouble to Samuel either. Samuel looked at her sharply, surprised, almost hurt. "Why would you think that?" he asked. "Because people might look at you differently," she whispered. "I don't want to put you in a difficult position. I don't want anyone thinking the wrong thing." Samuel walked closer, stopping only a few steps away. He didn't speak right away. When he finally did, his voice was calm but firm. "I don't care what people think," he said. "They don't live here. They don't know us. They don't know how much better this place feels with you in it." Lena looked up slowly. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," he replied. "I spent years with nothing but silence and empty rooms. I don't want to go back to that." His words made her chest warm, like someone had opened a window that let sunlight in. She nodded, relieved, though tears gathered at the corner of her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Samuel didn't expect how much those two words would affect him. He felt protective of her, not because she was weak, but because she had been strong alone for too long. He respected her. He appreciated her, and slowly, he began to care more deeply than he had expected. The days continued, and their bond grew even stronger. Lena learned to ride Daisy with Samuel, guiding her patiently. At first, she was nervous, gripping the reins too tightly. Samuel walked alongside her, telling her to relax, to trust the horse. Eventually, she did. And the moment Daisy began to trot softly, Lena laughed out loud, a real, free laugh that made Samuel smile wider than he had in years. Some evenings, they cooked together. Samuel wasn't good at following recipes, but he was good at chopping vegetables and telling amusing stories while doing it. Lena added spices, stirred the pots, and sometimes playfully teased him about his cooking style. Their conversations filled the house with warmth. One night after dinner, they sat outside watching the stars. The air was cool, and the sky was clear. Lena leaned back in her chair, feeling peaceful. "I didn't think I would ever feel calm again," she admitted. "Not like this." Samuel looked at her, his expression gentle. "Sometimes life surprises you," he said. "Sometimes it gives you exactly what you need, when you least expect it." Lena turned her head slightly toward him. "What about you? Did life give you anything back after all you lost?" He looked up at the sky, thinking. After a moment, he whispered, "Yes, I think it has." Lena didn't ask him to explain. She didn't need to. She felt the meaning in his words, and it made her heart beat a little faster. But deep inside, she also felt fear. Fear that this peaceful life might disappear. Fear that she might lose this place she had grown to love. Fear that she might one day have to leave. She tried to push those fears aside, but they stayed, quiet and hidden. Yet when she looked at Samuel sitting beside her, calm and steady, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt hope, and hope, she realized, was something she had been missing for a very long time. The next morning arrived quietly, but inside his heart, a storm was slowly settling into peace. After everything that had happened, he woke up with a different kind of strength. It was the strength that comes when a person has walked through deep struggle and finally learned who they are and what they want from life. For the first time in many weeks, he did not wake up with fear or confusion. Instead, he felt calm. He sat on the edge of his bed, looked around the room, and took a slow breath. Life had changed him, and now it was time to build something better from everything he had learned. He went outside to the small courtyard of the house. The sun was shining, but softly, like it was welcoming him into a new beginning. He looked up and smiled to himself. The world was the same, but he was not. He knew he could not erase the past, but he could decide how to walk into the future. He had seen pain, disappointment, loneliness, and even betrayal. But he had also seen his own courage. That courage felt like a companion now, pushing him gently forward. His family noticed the change in him. They did not need any big explanation. They could see it in his eyes and in the way he moved. He helped more around the house, talked with more patience, and listened with more respect. It wasn't because he wanted to impress them. It was because he had understood the true value of people who stand by you when your world becomes heavy. He also realized how many times he had stayed silent when he should have shared his feelings. Now he was trying to improve that part of himself. Later that day, he went for a long walk through the streets he had known since childhood. Every corner reminded him of something, moments from the past, dreams he once had, and decisions that shaped who he had become. He walked slowly, thinking about everything he had been through. Pain had taught him maturity. Hard times had taught him patience. Losing people had taught him the importance of communication, and the long, lonely nights had taught him how important it is to hold on to hope, even when life feels empty. He reached a small park where he sat on a bench under a big tree. He watched children playing, families laughing, and elders enjoying the sunlight. He realized that life never stops moving, even when one person feels stuck. It made him think deeply. He had spent so much time worrying about things that he had no control over. Now he understood that true peace comes from focusing on what you can change: your own actions, your words, your attitude, and your choices. As he sat there, he remembered the people who had hurt him, but instead of anger, he felt gratitude. If those moments had not happened, he would never have learned the lessons that now guided him. He wished them well in his heart, not because they deserved it, but because he deserved peace. Forgiveness, he realized, is not for the other person. It is a gift you give to yourself so you can move forward without carrying a heavy heart. His phone buzzed with a few messages, but he didn't rush to pick it up. He had once been someone who desperately waited for replies, constantly checking his phone, hoping someone cared. Today, he was someone who cared for his own well-being first. He finally understood that the right people would stay in his life without forcing him to constantly beg for attention. After spending some quiet time at the park, he returned home and sat down to make a plan for the future. He wanted to study more, improve his skills, and work on something meaningful. He wanted to become someone he could be proud of. Not perfect, but determined, disciplined, and emotionally strong. He wrote down his goals one by one, not as wishes, but as promises he was ready to fulfill. The first promise he made to himself was to never again depend on anyone for his happiness. The second was to communicate clearly instead of staying silent and letting misunderstandings grow. The third was to build his life step by step, without rushing or comparing himself to others. And the final promise was to choose peace over drama, kindness over ego, and self-respect over temporary emotions. That evening, he sat with his family for dinner. His mother asked how he was feeling, and this time, he didn't hide behind short answers. He talked openly about his plans, his experiences, and what he had learned. His mother listened with a deep, warm smile, proud of the maturity he had shown. His father nodded with approval, impressed by the strength he had gained through his struggles. That simple conversation brought a comfort he had not felt in a long time. After dinner, he stepped outside again. The sky was full of stars, and a gentle breeze touched his face. It felt like the world was telling him that everything was going to be all right. He thought about how far he had come. There was a time when he felt lost, but now he was beginning to find direction. There was a time when he doubted himself, but now he believed in his own ability to rise. He knew the road ahead would not always be easy. Life would still bring challenges, unexpected moments, and days when he might feel tired or uncertain, but he also knew he had the strength to face whatever would come. Pain had shaped him, struggles had strengthened him, and lessons had guided him. He was no longer afraid of the future. In the following weeks, he worked hard on his goals. He developed a routine that kept him focused and productive. He read more, practiced new skills, and avoided distractions that once wasted his time. He also took better care of his health, eating properly, exercising, and sleeping on time. He started feeling fresh and active, both in his body and in his mind. Slowly, his confidence grew. People around him noticed his progress. Some were surprised, some were impressed, and some even felt inspired. He never talked about his pain or the journey he had walked through. He let his actions show the change instead. There was a time he felt like giving up, but now he was someone who never stopped trying. One day, he met an old friend who had seen him during his difficult days. The friend looked at him and said, "You look different, more peaceful, more hopeful." Hearing this made him smile. It reminded him that transformation is visible not only to yourself, but also to others who knew the old version of you. He had learned that life is not about avoiding difficulties, it is about learning from them and rising stronger each time. He also understood that sometimes losing people helps you find yourself, and sometimes, the hardest experiences prepare you for the most meaningful chapters in your life. Months passed, and he continued growing quietly, steadily, and confidently. He achieved some of his goals, and he was still working on others, but he never rushed. He understood that growth takes time, and success comes when you stay patient and keep putting in effort, even when no one is watching. One night, as he looked at himself in the mirror, he felt proud not because he had become perfect, but because he had not given up. He had followed a path that led him from pain to wisdom, from confusion to clarity, and from heartbreak to self-respect. He had rebuilt himself quietly, without complaining, without blaming, and without losing hope. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "I made it." Not because the journey was over, but because he had finally reached a version of himself that he could trust, respect, and love. This was not an ending. This was a beginning, a fresh chapter, built with courage, patience, and faith. And he walked into it with a calm heart, ready for whatever life had planned for him.